Getting the table all set up. Nice breeze has just come. Hi breeze. Thank you, breeze. Thank you. The mosquitoes, you can't see them, but the mosquitoes are many. There are plenty. They're like, I got socks. Because I came scouting before and I saw the mosquitoes were insane, so I got socks. So my legs are covered. However, my chest, for real, these mosquitoes are...
If you're watching this, many blessings upon your home. May you experience the loving vitality that is a safe place to live. And a love so great it knows no bounds. It expands your heart in a way you never thought possible.
Why is it important for the library to be free?
It's too little else is. There's got to be something first rate in the world. Some bounty in the world that is free, something that you don't have to pay for. It can't be exclusive. You can't leave knowledge in the hands of just a few people who can manipulate it any way they wish. Only the best of everything is good enough for the least of us.
Okay, so I don't believe that love is just a feeling in decolonized communities. I think it's part of the structure, and it's built into policy and tone and everyday decisions. So I think we tend to treat love as something private, like it's this feeling between individuals that's always separate from systems and institutions. But I think decolonized communities treat love as something you build into how a place actually operates. So like a school that honors a student's chosen name, they're practicing love. A family that listens before lecturing is practicing it. A gym that makes room for people who don't fit this expected mold is practicing love. None of this is symbolic. It changes outcomes. Now, Gloria Anzaldúa wrote, "I change myself, I change the world." Now that reciprocity is the foundation. Every person who chooses honesty over performance helps dismantle a structure that's built on fear, one relationship at a time. Gender and sexuality aren't side issues to address once the real work is done. They are the real work. So I'm gonna leave you with this question. Where in your life could love stop being just a feeling and start being a policy or a practice or a decision you make before the moment demands it?
Before I was an editor and after I stopped, I was a university professor. And it always seemed to me that a university really was nothing but a collection of books and a few people who could tell students which ones to read and maybe spend some time talking about them. I feel the same way about the New York Public Library because it has access that does not require that you enroll in a university. It doesn't require that you have a passport or that you're a citizen or that you belong to a certain organization. No crisis of faith, no crisis of economy, no crisis of health. None of that is necessary for this institution for access. What I mean to say is, crisis of faith, you join a church. Crisis of health, you identify with a hospital or a great foundation. This is a privately funded, publicly supported, massive, as well as beautiful, matrix resource for people in New York and its environs, but also for people all over the world. All over the world. The fact that it's also beautiful, I think that kind of marriage is only as it should be. It has a reputation of being supported by New York's elite generously, as most institutions are, but it never abandoned its egalitarian, democratic accessibility and functions. Only the best of everything is good enough for the least of us. So that the restoration of the building was not simply the self-gratification of people who could afford to give, but it was for the enhancement of the intellectual environment of people who have no money whatsoever, to come here, to feel comfortable, and to do it in a first-class and beautiful environment.
A symbol of democracy, do you agree?
It's more than a symbol. I think it is representative of democracy. Now that to me is the function of a democracy. It's not the posture of the democratic principles. It's the activity of a democratic government, and certainly a democratic institution.
Our people would go to the praise house on Sunday and ask the Lord to send them rescue. One day, a slave named Obadiah was loading bricks onto a boat, and he saw something that had washed up on the shore. Moving closer, he saw that it was the wooden figure of a woman. Her body was growing out of a block of wood. A black woman, with her arm lifted up and her fist balled out. And to his shock, he heard her voice, clear as day. She said, "It's all right. I'm here. I'll be taking care of you now." And Obadiah knew at that moment that God had sent him. Now everyone knew the mother of Jesus' name was Mary, and that she was strong and constant and had a mother's heart. And here she was, sent to them across the same waters that had brought them there in chains. Seemed like she knew everything they suffered. Everything. And so the people went up one at a time and touched their hand to her chest. I want to grab on to the solace in her heart. They filled their hearts with fearlessness. She filled their hearts. And if they ever grew weak, they had only to touch her heart again. Touch her heart. Touch her heart. Touch her heart. Touch her heart.
Okay, so in Western education systems, knowledge is often treated as information. It's something that's stored in books or classrooms, with the experts. But in many indigenous traditions, knowledge is lived. It's not just what you know, it's how you live it. Learning isn't about memorizing or mastering. It's about participating and being in relation. It's about knowing through doing. Knowledge lives in land-based practice, and in ceremony, and in language, and in community responsibility. You don't learn respect by reading about it. You learn it by living in ways that are respectful to people, and to land, and to spirit, and to time. This is why knowledge in indigenous worldviews is often embodied, not abstract. It's not disembodied, it's not divorced from ethics. And this is also why colonial systems often dismissed indigenous knowledge, because it wasn't extractable, nor was it objective and couldn't be owned. But lived knowledge doesn't disappear. It lives in the way people carry water, gather medicines, care for children, and speak with the land.
Also, its network. What is of primary interest to me are the branch libraries, out in those boroughs. Every one of us, I think, wherever we grew up, remembers that first library. One dreams about it because those buildings are still operate very much as a kind of formation of early buildings one has gone into. Principally, I think, or at least primarily, for the children. You know, I don't remember my life before I could read. I have no picture of what there was. I learned to read early. A local library, a branch library, offers a child a chance not only to learn, but to become an articulate, self-conscious person. The books that you can't buy are yours. You touch them. You feel the paper. You look at the pictures. Those memories don't go away, and it introduces you to the world of one's own mind that is powerful and permanent. Not having that, I mean, when you think of the literature of countries, in this country, before there was a public library system, and when you read the diaries and journals of people, it's focused heavily, whether it's Frederick Douglass's slave narrative or the recollections of Thomas Jefferson, when they learned to read. Who taught them? Who spoke to them? When that happened, it's cataclysmic. There are other kinds of knowledge. There are other ways to perceive the world. This is special. And connected to all of that are those borough libraries, those libraries all around. And now, of course, much more specialized, Library for the Blind, theater library collections, adjusting themselves to the disabled, audio. Everything to make it possible for people to absorb and to talk back to, because it is a talking back relationship, to books.
You also suggest in your book about beauty that beauty can be a kind of antidote even to our most pressing global crises. How do you think of beauty as relevant in that sense?
Yeah, I think it's not just relevant, but I think it's actually necessary. Mm-hmm. Because I think that beauty is not a luxury, but I think it ennobles the heart and reminds us of the infinity that is within us. I always love what Mandela said when he came out. After 27 years in confinement for wrong you never committed, he turned himself into a huge priest and came out with this sentence where he said, that what we're afraid of is not so much our limitations, but the infinite within us. And I think that is in everybody. And I suppose the question that's at the heart of all we've been discussing, really, which is a beautiful question, is the question of God, And I think that one of the reasons that so many people turn away from religion in our times is that the God question has died for them, because the question has been framed in such repetitive, dead language. And I think it's the exciting question. Once you awaken to the presence of God.
Well, you have said, you write, God is beauty.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
Did you always feel that? Is that a sense that has grown in you, or something that you name now?
It's a sense that has grown in me, I suppose, that I've always kind of had the intuition about it. Because I feel that there are two ways that you must always keep together in approaching the God thing. One is, and this is what I like about the Christian tradition, and this is where I diverge a little from the Buddhist tradition, even though I love Buddhism as a methodology to clean up the mind and get you into purity of presence. And what I love is that at the heart of Christianity, you have this idea of intimacy, which is true belonging, being seen, the ultimate home of individuation, the ultimate source of it, and the homecoming, that's what I'd call spirituality, is the art of homecoming. So it's St. Augustine's phrase, like Deus intimi or intimeo meo, God is more intimate to me than I am to myself. Then you go to Meister Eckhart and you get the other side of it, which you must always keep together with it, where in Middle High German he says, Gott wird und Gott entwirrt. That means God becomes and God unbecomes. Or translated, it means that God is only our name for it, and the closer we get to it, the more it ceases to be God. So then you're on a real safari with the wildness and danger and otherness of God. And I think when you begin to get a sense of the depth that is there, then your whole heart wakens up. You know, I mean, I love Irenaeus' thing from the 2nd century, which said that the glory of God is the human being fully alive. And I think in our culture that one of the things that we're missing is that these thresholds where we can encounter this and where we move into new change in our lives, there are no rituals to help us to recognize them or to cross them worthily.
And you know, threshold is a word you use a great deal in your book on beauty as well.
It is, yeah.
And what is that relationship between beauty and thresholds?
Well, I think that the threshold, if you go back to the etymology of the word threshold, it comes from thrashen, which is to separate the grain from the husk. So the threshold, in a way, is a place where you move into more critical and challenging and worthy fullness. And I think there are huge thresholds in every life. I mean, I think, you know, that, for instance, I'd like to give a very simple example of it, is that if you're in the middle of your life on a busy evening, 50 things to do, and you get a phone call that somebody that you love is suddenly dying. It takes 10 seconds to communicate that information, but when you put the phone down, you're already standing in a different world. Because suddenly everything that seemed so important before is all gone, and now you're thinking of this. So the given world that we think is there and the solid ground we're on is so tentative. And I think a threshold is a line which separates two territories of spirit. And I think that very often how we cross is the key thing.
And where's beauty in that?
Where beauty is, I think, is beauty isn't all about just nice loveliness. Like, beauty is about more rounded, substantial becoming. And I think when we cross a new threshold, that if we cross worthily, what we do is we heal the patterns of repetition that were in us that had us caught somewhere. And in our crossing, then we cross on to new ground where we just don't repeat what we've been through in the last place we were. So I think beauty in that sense is about an emerging fullness, a greater sense of grace and elegance, a deeper sense of depth, and also a kind of homecoming for the enriched memory of your unfolding life.
Why is it important for the library to be free?
It's too little else is. There's got to be something first-rate in the world, some bounty in the world that is free, something that you don't have to pay for. It can't be exclusive. You can't leave knowledge in the hands of just a few people who can manipulate it any way they wish. I am a writer. It is my determination to write texts that appeal to all kinds of people, viscerally and intellectually, to provide no escape from certain kinds of realizations, and at the same time to provide a certain kind of welcome and hope. I don't do it because the word author suggests some authoritarian sovereignty, but it is the opening up of whatever my vision is to anyone who wants to step in. That is what is true about books. They must be free. There is nothing that is more fearful in terms of being a writer or working as I do on the Board of Trustees here, then the notion of some arbitrary selector of what can be read and how it can be distributed, who should read it, and how it is to be written. So it's not only the freedom of access to the books in the library, it's the fact that books themselves are, by the nature of the beast, open. Books open.
The title that we are considering for the show is going to be called The People's Palace. And if you kind of agree with that term, what do you think about that phrase?
Oh, I like that. I like it for a number of reasons. A kind of people's palace suggests exactly that idea, that everyone has access to the beauty and the bounty and all of the power that knowledge really provides.
Okay, so wellness isn't a calm baseline. So for a lot of people, it's the first time they've been seen without bracing for what comes next. So years ago, I started running this safe zone training with my students, like 10 years ago. There are these sessions that were built around understanding gender and sexual identity. The first one was really tense. Everyone was like super careful and worried about saying the wrong thing, but curiosity slowly replaced caution. One student said that it was the first time she felt able to ask what she actually thought instead of what she was supposed to think. Another one realized that he'd never been taught what non-binary meant, and that he'd actually been taught not to ask. So that shift from defensiveness to curiosity is what inclusive wellness spaces actually create. So it's not necessarily agreement on everything. It's just enough safety for honest questions. Now, Paulo Freire called it conscientization, the awakening of critical awareness through dialogue. It doesn't require a perfect institution. It requires someone willing to start the conversation. So when did curiosity replace caution for you around a topic you were taught not to ask about? And what made that shift possible?
It has to share information about each other. It has to know what it is like to be another person or to be in another place. It has to have that knowledge so it cannot be tricked, cheated, manipulated, taken for granted. One of the reasons the Dark Ages were dark was not only because of the absence of electricity, but because books were in the hands of very few people. The clergy, for the most part, and distributed as almost secrets. A code had to be broken. Once that was at its peak, the population can be told anything, drawn into any kind of activity, hurt itself, go without, not understand its rights, not assert itself. People have the ability as well as the right to distinguish among ideas, to develop sympathies for and antipathies toward ideas, cultures, histories, whatever, and to simply have a community of readers like them, or a community of readers who don't share their opinions, where they exchange ideas. Now that is true empowerment. That's truly enabling a citizenry. Those 4 or 5 librarians for whom I worked, myself and my sister those years, were as important to us as any adults we knew. Not only because they're knowledgeable, but also because of it's an almost missionary zeal that they have about the work they do. They're handling information and data at every level. They preserve the book as a classic example of how information is transmitted, but they cannot stop there. Information has to be gotten quickly, so a lot of it has to be sorted through, so they have to be very adept not only at electronic systems delivery, but also the formation of such systems so that people can indeed have information quickly.
Do you think the library has a function of being a teacher?
In the best sense of being a teacher, which is to say, if teaching means removing cataracts and opening doors, it's stirring up and unsettling a little bit, then that's what the library can do because of what's available here. If it means, sort of shooting information into the mind as though it were, then that's not what this place is for. As a teacher, one has to demand the participation of the student. A good teacher helps you teach yourself. That's what the library does. It helps you teach yourself. It makes us all autodidacts in a way. You have to find your way. There's some guidance, there's some information, there's somebody to lead. There's no one to simply tell you all you need to know. That's the best kind of teaching, and that's what the library can do.
All right, so it's pretty crazy that a lot of us grew up believing that a good parent never fails their child. So we either spend our lives defending our parents or we spend it resenting them because the standard was impossible. Now, the research tells a completely different story, though. Researcher Dan Siegel's work on attachment shows that secure children aren't those whose parents never failed them. It's those parents who repaired after failure. So repair is the point. Now, colonialism's efficiency culture punished emotional slowness. And we got generations of parents who learned to move past pain quickly or not even at all. The model was strength through endurance. And the result was children who learned that their emotional world was just too inconvenient for everybody. So this is what Gabor Maté calls the alternative compassionate inquiry. Meeting pain with curiosity instead of judgment. So when a parent learns to sit with a child's tears rather than stop them, listen to what happens here. They dismantle centuries of emotional repression that's been passed off as toughness. This is precision. You don't need to be a perfect parent. You need to be a parent who comes back. So to give you something to reflect on, think of a rupture in a relationship. So maybe with a child, a partner, or a parent. What would it mean to prioritize repair over pride?
What scares you about the library in the future?
Oh, I have a number of fears about the future. They're all connected to money, of course. Preserving the books, having the books, acquiring them in the first place. And also the notion that the library is not vital to the life of the city troubles me a lot, because in days like these where everybody is broke and everybody is cutting back, everybody has to make a sacrifice. there is some suspicion, I think, in the public at large and perhaps in the administrations in general, that the library is easy to cut, that it's all right, that it's superfluous, that it may even be a luxury. The dream is that the New York Public Library will clone itself and that it will be a model for libraries all over the country. Not necessarily the size, but the attitude. If you could get libraries all over the country to assert themselves into the budgetary concerns of their local governments and take pride in their collections, in their funding capabilities, their buildings, their sense of history, it would delight me.
I'd like to leave you with something to think about for this summer. But first, I would be remiss if I didn't say, I'm Chad Lawson, and let's calm it down in 3, 2, 1. Now again, we'll be back in September, so if you start back at episode number 1 and play through each week until September, you'll never know the difference. But I'd like for you to do something with me. I know this is strange, but we're close by this point. I hope, at least. No one is around, but I'd like for you to stand with me. If I held the mic next to my knees, you'd hear them crack. But if you would, just stand and put your 2 feet together, side by side. Okay. Standing straight, feet firmly on the ground. I want you to look at your feet. You could be barefoot, you could have boots on, wooden clogs, it doesn't matter. Just notice your feet next to each other. Now, slowly, with 1 foot, take a small step. Just one. Nothing big, just a normal step. Slowly. Stepping down securely, if you would, take your other foot and bring it next to the foot that took the first step. Easy enough. We do this every day. With both feet together, again, side by side, feet firmly on the ground, I want you to notice you are no longer standing where you just were a moment ago. You took 2 steps that moved you forward, one at a time. When the mornings are hard, when you just want to throw the towel in, when you've had enough, I want you to promise me you'll stand up no matter where you are and you'll look at your feet. I want you to promise me, as hard as it may be, through tears, through anxiety, through depression, through loneliness, through whatever funk it may be, I'm begging you to promise me that you will stand with each foot side by side and with a deep breath, move 1 foot forward, exhale, take a deep breath, and move the other foot forward. Will you do this for me? Promise, no matter what life throws at you, be it sand in your swim shorts or eaten by a shark, I don't know, I know. Whatever it is, will you promise that you'll stand up and simply just take 2 steps forward? That's all I'm asking. Because some days that's all we can do. But even taking that 1 step is all I'm asking.
You touched on it. Why is it important for the library to be free?
It's too little else is. There's got to be something first-rate in the world, some bounty in the world that is free, something that you don't have to pay for. It can't be exclusive. You can't leave knowledge in the hands of just a few people who can manipulate it any way they wish. Only the best of everything is good enough for the least of us.
I'd like to borrow a truth from Rebecca Solnit because it feels apropos for the moment. Your opponents would love you to believe it's hopeless, that you have no power, that nothing you do matters, that change is impossible. That story is strategic. Hope is not naivete. Hope is not optimism. Hope is a resource, and you don't have to surrender it. Hope is memory. The status quo survives by pretending it's immutable, inevitable, invulnerable. And the fastest way to sell that lie is to erase how much things have already changed. If you don't remember when being queer was illegal, if you don't remember rivers literally catching fire from pollution, if you don't remember that homelessness in the U.S. was rare before the economic shifts of the Reagan era, if you don't remember that we had vastly more wildlife just decades ago, then of course it feels permanent. Of course it feels unbeatable. Of course hope sounds childish. But history tells a different story. Everything you're told can't change has changed before, often radically, often because ordinary people refuse to accept inevitability. Hope isn't defiance for defiance sake. Hope is pattern recognition across time. Memory equals hope, and collective memory is called history. If you want hope, don't look away, look back. Then look forward with clear eyes. The field has shifted before. It will shift again.
Okay, so I know we tend to think of safety as the absence of danger, like nothing bad is happening. Trauma researchers define it differently. So safety is that presence of acceptance. It's basically like that felt sense that you don't have to negotiate your right to exist in a room. Now, sociologist Pierre Bourdieu used the word habitus for the bodily expectations that a culture installs in us without our consent. So like how we sit, how we move, how we brace. Empire built a habitus too. It taught entire generations to read difference as danger before the mind even catches up. So I once walked through this neighborhood in Chicago where rainbow flags hung beside community banners and music spilled out of open doors, and people weren't performing this, they were resting. That's the part most people miss about identity affirming spaces. They're not about celebration for its own sake. They're about a body finally getting permission to stop scanning for threat. So I want to ask this. Think of a space where you finally felt your body relax. And what made that possible? And who else in your life might be waiting for the same exact permission?
I'm learning lots about being where I am, being who I am, accepting who I am, which is so crazy because before this year I thought I had I had accepted who I am. And I guess there's no end to accepting who you are. So like it's possible next year I accept even more of who I am, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't know that this is what it meant to accept who one is. But I recently got to a new frontier in this journey of self-acceptance, and as with all new things, it feels new. It feels, oh wow, what a brave new world ahead of me. But exciting altogether. I'm so grateful for life. Grateful for a lot that has happened, that come my way. A lot of people have had the opportunity to connect with and to disconnect with. A lot of opportunities to learn, to grow, to see life as many things. And so I'm bringing all of this energy, all of these experiences, these feelings of late that have to do with growth and change and acceptance. I'm bringing all of it to you today in this episode. Are we doomed to becoming our parents? Are we doomed to never changing, to never having control over who we can be?